Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here for Rampant Design Tools, and I'm back again with another tutorial. This time we're going to be talking about working with 4K flash transitions inside of Davinci's Resolve. Now you've seen in other tutorials I've done how simple and effective these great looking elements are to drop into any aspect of your timeline, whether it is as a transition or maybe it's just as an element that you're going to have over top of a clip. These elements are, again, not only simple to use, but very powerful and will always deliver the message you want to convey in any production you happen to be working on. Now, in this lesson, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out showing you how you can easily get your timeline from your nonlinear editing application into Resolve, and then how we're going to bring in these elements quickly and easily to drop into our timeline so that we can create the look that we want. Okay, short introduction here. Let's just start out in Avid Media Composer and let's get started. Okay, so let's Command and Tab into Avid Media Composer, obviously an Alt and Tab for all my Windows friends out there. And I have a timeline all set to go. Now all I need to do to send this timeline to Resolve, very simple. I'm going to right click and I'm going to simply say Export. Now I actually already have a preset set up to do a After Effects round trip. The technique is very similar to a Resolve round trip, but what I would be doing here is I just have the preset called 4AE Exports, but you'll see that inside of that 4AE Exports preset, it's basically just a simple video AAF export linking to the media that already lives on my hard drive. No embedding anything. The file is going to be very small when we export it. I'm simply going to say save. Now actually, before I say save, keep in mind that you could send audio to Resolve at the same time if you wanted to. I wouldn't recommend sending, if you have like 26 channels of audio, I wouldn't recommend sending all that. But if you wanted to export a 2-channel stereo file for reference, you could easily do that and just simply include audio tracks in the sequence. But like I said, we're just going to leave this like that for now. I'm simply going to say save, and we'll send this to the desktop. I'll just say save. In a matter of seconds, that AAF file will be on our desktop ready to go. So how does this work in Premiere? Does it work very similar? Well, of course it does. What I'm going to do, again, Command and Tab into Premiere, again, Alt and Tab for all my Windows friends out there. In Premiere, we do have a few options. What we can do is simply navigate up to File. We can come down to Export, and you'll see that you can export an EDL, an XML for Final Cut Pro, or in most cases, you're just simply going to export an AAF file, much like we did inside of Avid Media Composer. Now you'll see that if I had multi-channel video, we could mix down the video if we wanted to. We can also break out the audio to mono. I'm just going to leave everything the way that it is. Simply say OK. And I'm going to send this to the desktop. Again, you'll see in a matter of seconds that AAF file will be on our desktop again, all set to go. Now let's Command and Tab into Final Cut Pro 10. There is obviously no Alt and Tab because obviously it is a Mac only application. And inside of Final Cut Pro 10, we're not going to be exporting an AAF file. What we're going to do is simply export a Final Cut Pro 10 XML file. Now I could call this FCPX sequence, okay? And I could send this to the desktop, simply say save. And now we are ready to get into Resolve to add in our 4K flash transitions. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's Command and Tab into Davinci Resolve. Again, obviously Alt and Tab for my Windows friends out there. I'm just going to create a new project. We'll just simply say open. And once the project's open, it's completely bare, nothing in there. So let's get our timeline into Resolve to start working with. Now I'm just going to use the Media Composer timeline. I'm simply going to navigate up to File. Now whether it was an AAF, an EDL, or an XML file that you happen to export from your nonlinear editing application, they're all brought in exactly the same. I'm simply going to import AAF, EDL, or XML. And of course, we're going back to our desktop here. I'm going to come to my Media Composer sequence. I'm going to say open. Now the timeline that I was working in was 1280 by 720. But the best thing is that with these Rampant Design Tools elements, it really doesn't matter. A lot of people say, well, I'm not working in, 2K, 4K, so I guess this, these elements don't really apply to me. But believe it or not, they do, because the best thing is that they're just future-proofing you for any project you might work on down the line, where let's say you've moved from working in HD to a 2K project. Guess what? You're already covered. These elements are 4K, ready to be worked with right away. Okay, so I'm just going to set my resolution to be 1280 by 720. I'll just leave the master timeline start time code to be 1 hour. We can automatically set the project settings. And I'm simply just going to say, okay. What's going to happen is that Resolve is immediately going to create me a new timeline based on my AAF. And it's going to be exactly as I had it inside of Media Composer, Premiere Pro, or Final Cut Pro 10. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to bring in some elements, and I'm not just going to bring in the flash elements. I'm going to bring in a lens flare element as well, just for kicks here. Okay, let me just zoom back a little bit here. Let's head back to our Media tab. what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate onto my G-Speed Studio RAID. I'm going to come down to my elements where I know I have my Rampant Design Tools elements here. And I think the first element I want to bring in is I love these Rampant Design Tools Studio flares. So I'm just going to come in here, and of course what we can do is that once we're in the folder, we can preview any one of the elements by simply clicking on it. We can just drag it through. We could play it if we wanted to. You know what? This is actually a very cool element. I'm just going to take it, I'm going to drag and drop it into my project. Okay. This is always a great way that you can get in and sample clips if you decided, well, maybe I want to see what, clip 7 does. Let's just play it here. And we can get a preview of this lens flare before we bring it in to start working on it. Now that's really going to help us when we get into our flash transitions. So let's do that. We're looking for our Rampant 4K flash transitions here. Here they are right here. Okay, and let's just pick a few of them. I think I actually have 3 transitions in here with 4 clips. So let's just pick a few different elements here. That one's a good one. I like that one. So let's just grab this one, drag and drop. Again, a great way to get in and sample your transitions before you choose them here. I'm just going to hit play. That's another great one here. Let's just take that, drag and drop, and let's just come down here. Let's, I don't know, 60. Okay. This is the great thing that you can see that I'm really not picking anything specific. It's just a matter of, let's just go, I don't know, 51. I'll call it 51. Let's preview it here. That's another great one. And let's just do, I don't know, I think I like 60 with that green or that yellow. Very nice. Let's take 60. I'll just drag that in as well. Okay. So let's head back to our edit category here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back and I think I'm going to put the lens flare over top of this clip right here. Okay. So let's go to our studio flare and let's pick a place where we're going to have this start. So I think I'm going to have it start right about there. So I'm going to mark that as my endpoint. We can now simply take the clip and let's actually create a new video track here. I'm just going to grab it, drag and drop it right here. Now we don't want this lens flare to extend into the next shot. We want it to end right here with the cut because we're going to have our flash transition get it off here, get it off of this shot. Okay. And what I'm also going to do now is I'm just going to position all of my flash transitions where I'm going to want them to be so that I'm happy with them. Now, the way that you need to think about working with these flash transitions is wherever the flash is full in the frame. Now, again, this is subjective because we are working with elements that are larger than our frame, so we could reposition them if we want to. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag through and find where this lens flare, or pardon me, this flash effect right there gets to be full frame. I'm just going to mark that as my endpoint. Again, drag and drop. I could just drag this right back onto video 2. Now I am going to need a new video track for my other ones here. So let's go to our next flash transition here. Just double click and let's see, right about there. We're going to mark that as our endpoint again, simply drag and drop. Now again, remember that by doing this, I'm actually cutting half of the flare out, which we're going to add back in just a second. There we go. So to add the rest of the flare back in, we're just going to trim it back here. Okay, just like such, and just like such. Now it doesn't look like much right now because basically it's going to cut to this flash transition like that. Okay. So what we need to do is get in and work with some transfer modes. So let's do that. The first transfer mode I'm going to add is on my lens flare right here. All I need to do is to make sure that the inspector is visible. Now if it's not, you're going to notice it visible up here in the upper right hand corner. Now I should also mention here that I am working in Davinci Resolve version 12. Now this is the studio version, but it doesn't really matter if you're working with the studio or the free version. The technique I'm showing you works the same in both versions. Okay, we're going to call the inspector up because as you can see, the very first category is the composite mode, and in most cases you're either going to use an additive transfer mode or a screen transfer mode. Now for me, I personally like the additive transfer mode. It just gives it that little bit more of that flare look. Now you'll see that if I come back here and hit play, we create this very cool looking flare. Now, of course, over this shot, maybe what we'd want to do is we might actually want to have this, on the other side of the screen. So maybe what we'd want to do is just rotate it right around here. We could even just punch in a value of 180 degrees, kind of like that. Very cool. Okay. And of course, you can get in. We could zoom in on this just a little bit if we wanted to, just like such. Very cool. Okay. Nice. Okay. Now, of course, again, we want to make sure that our transitions are doing the exact same thing here. So let me just come in. I'm going to switch my composite mode here again to be an additive. Do the same thing with these elements here. And basically, believe it or not, we're actually done. Okay. I can now come back and simply hit play. And we're now going to get a transition just like that. We're going to get another transition here just like that. With our lens flare, very nice. And here's our last transition right here. Boom. Good to go. And you can see that working with these elements in a program like Resolve is just as simple as working with them in really any nonlinear editing application. It's really only your imagination that's going to hold you back from creating some very cool elements inside of your timeline. Now don't forget, if you want some great free 4K elements to work with, you can head on over to 4kfree.com, and to check out our entire product line and some great tutorials to get you up and running nice and quick, you can check us out at rampantdesigntools.com.